By now, many of you would have seen the movie The Tinder Swindler on Netflix. It was released a couple of weeks back and it's already #1 here in the UK. I remember my first reaction to it when I saw it was, what the heck is that? I was filled with so much rage, especially about how those women were treated, by the Israeli con artist, essentially, Simon Leviev. And indeed, many people have, reacted to it on social media, be it on, Twitter or Facebook or, other social media platforms. And I've read through a lot of those comments, and some of them are really not so generous. Some have sympathized with these women, of course, but there are those who have also, been very unsympathetic. Some have even called them gold diggers, and I think that is a bit of victim blaming, and it's really not too fair to, punch down on people when they're already down. These women have lost nearly, hundreds of thousands to the millions of dollars or pounds sterling, to this con artist. And so that the least they could get from the public is sympathy. Well, of course, they didn't do it for public sympathy, but given their, their courage to warn other people against, the likes of Simon Leviev, that courage to actually come out, to put themselves out there, I think needs to be commended, to think beyond themselves, because other people will be so ashamed, not to come out. But these women have actually come out, and I think, they deserve, if not anything at all, some sympathy. And indeed, they've gone on to, open a GoFundMe page to help them recoup some of their losses. Well, of course, it's voluntary. I'll share a link to in the description box below to their GoFundMe page. And if you are led to, give something to that cause, that will be lovely. As the last time that I checked, they had raised about £50,000, which is not too bad, I must say, but they clearly need more than that. But anyway, today I want to elevate the conversation beyond, just share gossips or, just sharing emotions or sentiments about that. I think that the movie offers us an opportunity to look beyond, the drama or the emotions, to see what lessons, what money lessons especially, that we can learn from this, because these things happen day in, day out. In fact, I recommended the movie to a Ghanaian friend of mine, and after watching it, what he said was that, Shadrach, but this is not surprising. And indeed, it is not surprising. It is so common, and yet so many people fall to this all the time, to romance con artists or things of the sort. So anyway, I wanted us to elevate the conversation beyond that, and then to discuss what money lessons that we can learn from the Tinder swindler. In the interest of diaspora careers and investments, what can we learn from it? Well, my name is Shadrach. Stick around with me, and I'll share 5 key money lessons from the Tinder swindler. The first and perhaps obvious lesson from the Tinder swindler is don't lend money to somebody beyond what you're ready to lose. In fact, I dare add that don't borrow money to lend to somebody beyond what you are ready to lose. Particularly somebody you don't know so well, somebody you are in a love relationship with, and 3, without a contract. Or if you've not seen the movie, Simon Leviev, portrays himself as this, rich diamond dealer, and buys or, gets these women to fall in love with him. And then after a few months, comes back to tell them that, he needs this amount of money, often beyond, what the women themselves had. And because of, whether loyalty or because they want to maintain that friendship, they go on to, borrow money from their credit cards or even other, throat-cutting loans, and then lend to him. So you see clearly there that this is money these women did not have themselves. They actually went to borrow it, to lend it to him. And this is somebody they barely met, not more than a month. In some cases, a few weeks, So I think the lesson there is that don't lend money beyond what you're ready to lose. But particularly, don't borrow money to lend it to somebody, because if you had the money, you wouldn't go, to borrow it in the first place. So you could tell the person that, I'm sorry, but I do not have it. Particularly somebody you've barely met for, a month. So I think that is the key lesson there. And more importantly, if you're going to do that too, perhaps you should have a contract, something binding. Perhaps if it's going to be £10,000 or £50,000 in some cases, you would perhaps want to get even a lawyer involved to get a contract down. And while, you know, it seems like you don't trust them, it only protects your friendship, because in the end, not only did they lose their money and all the life that is set them back, they've also lost the friendship, which, you know, supposedly mattered so much to them that they let their guards down. So if you want to protect your friendship, if not for anything at all, have a contract. But primarily, don't go lend money beyond what you are, you know, you are ready to lose. That is the key lesson there. The second lesson from the Tinder lesson is that appearances can be deceptive. I mean, I must say that once I saw, you know, Simon Leviev, you know, portray that level of opulence, I knew that this guy is up to something. Because for those of us in the, you know, whether the African community, we know of the hush puppies or other fraudsters and how they portray themselves. You know, they often wear these designers and all sorts of things to show that they've got lots of money. But really, look at the Zuckerbergs or even Gates or, you know, Elon Musk and all those rich, even Dangote, those rich guys, they are not always wearing designers. I know in this culture of, you know, influencer and all these social media things, that seems to be the desirable currency that gets you lots of following. But I mean, not just to women, but everyone ought to have their guards up. You need to be more observant. Nobody who earns their real money through blood and sweat, you know, would splash it in that form. Of course, unless you are a hip-hop artist or you are, you know, into some other business that requires that. Barely do people who make their money through legit means actually, you know, splash it in that manner. So, yeah, the lesson there is that appearances can be deceptive and not all that glitters is gold. And if it looks too good to be true, then hey, perhaps it is too good to be true. So yeah, the third lesson from the movie would be that if there is a sense of urgency to someone needing money, you know, to come and borrow money from you, perhaps you would want to be the one to put some brakes on them, to ask them to relax a bit while you investigate to see the veracity of it. Because, I mean, that reminds me of a case where one of my colleagues got an email from their supervisor that they are somewhere stuck in Nigeria because, you know, so they need some money to pay something and, you know, he should send money to them. And because of the relationship between them, he sent the money without even thinking twice. And it came out that, you know, it was fraudulent, of course. I'm sure you listening will go like, of course, he should have figured that out. But because there was that sense of urgency, it did not allow him to think through this properly. And likewise, in the movie, we see that Simon Leviev, you know, would often say that, you know, my enemies after me, send me money. I mean, you ought to, you know, help these people, you know, calm down. For all you know, they've been kidnapped indeed. And their kidnappers are demanding that ransom. So you can be the one, you know, that voice of conscience for them to relax and then, you know, make sure they're making the right decision. I always say that desperation can be expensive. There are times where you've been desperate or, you know, if that urgency, you know, that you've not let down you've not allowed the emotions to die down and you've taken some decisions, whether going for, you know, a loan at a very high rate because you are desperate, or you've gone into some contract because you are desperate, or you've even used impulse to buy something that you really don't need. So yeah, that is the third lesson. And I hope, I mean, that is helpful to you. The fourth lesson I would say is that don't be afraid to talk about money. In our society today, it seems, you know, frowned upon to talk about money or, you know, like sex or politics or even religion. It seems, you know, a no-go area, particularly when you're dating somebody. People don't want to offend you, so they don't want to talk about these things. But if you're dating somebody and you're planning to settle with them, you know, particularly when they promise you of marriage, you want to have these difficult conversations, particularly about money. How do they spend their money? What is their source of income? Any extra sources of income? You want to talk about this. How do they spend their money? Who do they owe? Who are your enemies? You know, who will come after you someday? You need to have these conversations, because if not, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And money is a source of, you know, lots of breakups or even divorces. So these are conversations you want to have. The earlier you have them, the better. So with Val's Day coming up, or I don't know whether you'll be seeing this video on Valentine's Day, you want to have that conversation about money. When you go out there on the date, while they are ordering the pizza, the you know, the Chinese or the Indian food or anything, how slip in that conversation about money that, how are we paying for this meal? You want to have that conversation too. Yeah. The fifth and final lesson is that don't ignore the red flags. I'm sure, all these women, in fact, at some point, some of them said that, Simon, what is happening? They could almost sense that there's something wrong, whether by his countenance or by the way he was having the conversations with them. They could sense something, but they had let their guards down so much that they couldn't even, do anything about it. In fact, they were so much sold out into it because they were already in debt by about 10,000 or even 20,000 or more pounds that they couldn't come out at that stage. So the other thing is, don't ignore the red flags. And particularly, one of the red flags which I saw in that movie was when Simon was persuading the first girl, I can't remember her name, persuading her to lie to increase the amount on her credit card. This is somebody who is lying to you to almost commit a crime. This is a red flag, and I hope, I'm using the red flags emojis. This is a red flag, somebody who wants to implicate you, to commit a crime, to lie to get extra money for them. How do you, protect yourself if anything goes wrong? So, those are the 5 thoughts. And let me share a last one with you, a bonus point with you, which was from Ayleen, the badass girl, who was, selling Shimon's designer clothes on eBay. I mean, that tells you that not a lot of clothes you don't use, or you've got some equipment or some items that you don't need. For example, a cloth or a gadget you bought from Christmas, which is now redundant and you don't need anymore. Put it on eBay, put it on Facebook Marketplace, put it on your WhatsApp status, and sell it to somebody who needs it. You don't know how much you can actually raise from there. Because we see that in the movie, actually, Ayleen started selling, 3 bags full of designer clothes. She washes them, presses it, and then put it out on eBay. And people are buying it for 150 to 200 pounds or, whatever currency that you are familiar with. So anyway, those are the lessons from the Tinder swindler I thought I would share with you to elevate the conversation, but also to make you to put your guard up and also, be a lot more thoughtful and prudent when it comes to money. If you meet somebody for the first time, Google them, search them up, do your diligence, do your due diligence on them. It wouldn't hurt to do a simple Google search and ask the right questions. It will save you a lot of pain. I mean, all sympathies to those ladies who have been victims to, Shimon's schemes. They've been set back by nearly 10 years or even more. They have to pay all this money. Some had to put themselves through mental hospitals. And, so anyway, thank you for stopping by, and I hope you've learned a thing or two. Use the comment section to let me know your own thoughts about the Tinder swindler, particularly, the money lessons you've learned from it. Stay blessed and enjoy the rest of your week.